बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदना ब्रज जन रंजना यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजना यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजना यमुना तीर वनचारी यमुना तीर वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी 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 जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय ओम विष्णुपद परमहंस प्रवचकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत श्री श्रीमद श्रील अभय चरणानंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नाम आचार्य शिल ठाकुर हरिदास की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा देवी की जय। यमुना मई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन डीबीटी संस्थापक आचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. This is the glorification of Rupa Goswami in anticipation of his appearance day anniversary. We've been asked to speak about particularly Rupa Goswami's contribution to the world of literature in general, even, but Vaishnava literature especially, and in particular Gaudiya Vaishnava literature. What was the topic that the last speaker spoke on? Same?
Like yesterday?
No, today.
Today, same.
Same. Okay, so everybody, hopefully there's not too much repetition here. Did he mention each of Rupa Goswami's works?
Yes.
Did he describe them? Okay, so then we can skip that part. All right, well, I was going to talk about that, but...
But that was for English. That was in Hindi.
Hindi?
Not everybody attended that, Prabhu. We were not.
Not everyone attended that. And how many here understand Hindi? Pretty much everybody. But they were not here.
Many of them left.
Okay, TK. All right. So, we know that, I was fortunate because I'm going to speak mostly about Laghu Bhagavatamritam today, because I was fortunate enough to be involved in publishing that book for the BBT some years ago. We know that this so-called Bhakti Kal, Bhakti Renaissance, sometimes they say, happened in the 16th century surrounding Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we would say instigated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we know that his followers produced a tremendous output of literatures. We've heard about them. Rupa Goswami himself was, of course, one of those most faithful followers of Lord Chaitanya. Arguably, of the six Goswamis, Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatana Goswami, and Srila Jiva Goswami were the most prolific writers in Sanskrit. And we can judge their writings by a number of criteria. We can look at them in terms of their profound spiritual depth, or we can look at them in terms of their very strong rhetoric, incisive arguments, keen acumen, that is to say, very intelligent descriptions and explanations, the vast range of topics that they covered, the vast range of shastras that they studied and supported their arguments with. Or we can look at them in terms of their artistic beauty, which was also not light, but or even just by looking at them in terms of their sheer number. These Goswamis produced a tremendous amount of wonderful literature that the world has not forgotten and that we're still studying even today in 2024. So of these three Goswamis, that is to say Rupa, Sanatana, Jiva, Rupa Goswami is maybe one of the most, certainly one of the most important of the Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas, no doubt about it. He's called Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada to indicate his position as preeminent among so many other spiritual masters. His contribution to the Sampradaya in terms of his literature, whether you look at the literature in terms of theology, philosophy, even drama, even grammar also, what to speak of pure Sahitya. His contribution was monumental. And he wrote more than 16 other books, aside from the Laghu Bhagavatamritam, which you've heard. I'll just quickly go through the list. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is arguably the most important of his works, or magnum opus, we might say. And that work is compounded or elaborated by his Ujjvala Nilamani, which we can say functions as a sequel to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in that it focuses exclusively on Madhurya Rasa. Madhurya Rasa being the specific contribution of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this Kali Yuga. And then he wrote his Ujjvala Nilamani, the sapphire of Madhurya Rasa, you can say, that deals into all the details of Sringara Rasa, Krishna's relationship with Srimati Radharani and her friends. A very elevated topic. So then there was, in addition to that, there's Vidagdha Madhava, an 8-act play about Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes, including the first meeting of Srimati Radharani, Purvaraga, with Krishna, and her man, and other matters of Leela. Lalita Madhava is a 10-act play about Krishna's pastimes outside of Vraj, mainly his Dwarka Leelas. So there are many, many topics there as well in terms of Leela. Danakeli Kaumudi, he wrote. It's a short 1-act play about the toll tax that Krishna and his friends charge with the gopis with at Govardhan. If you go to Govardhan Hill in 2024, you will still be charged tax. Local boys following in Krishna's footsteps to this day. At least when I was living there, they were doing it. Presumably, they're still doing it. Natak Chandrika, that's a work on dramaturgy, the moonlight of Natak, all about the aspects of how to write a play. Rupa Goswami wrote so many plays. We don't usually perform those plays, isn't it? Tamal Krishna Goswami, in his wisdom, decided that he wanted to change the caliber of the plays that we generally observe in ISKCON. And for that reason, he wrote one Jagannath, what is it? Jagannath Priyanatakam, he titled it. An English play on the appearance of Lord Jagannath, but very strictly following all the conventions of Sanskrit drama. Very wonderful topic he chose there. So Rupa Goswami wrote Natak Chandrika for that reason also, because he was busy with plays. Stavamala, as the name suggests. Stava means? Prayers, and mala. Yes, a string of prayers. There are many, many prayers by Rupa Goswami. By prayers, I don't mean verses, I mean separate stotras, stavas. So I don't know how many offhand, but he wrote that as well. Padyavali is another interesting book from Rupa Goswami, an anthology of poetic verse from about 125 authors, including himself. Some of those verses Rupa Goswami wrote himself, but most of the verses he's quoting from other acharyas and other, not even acharyas, even from mundane poets as well. But he tweaks them in such a way that they fit into Krishna consciousness. Only he could do this. I mean, in India, there's no such thing as copyright, right? When you're going from here to Delhi, what do you see? Papu Dhaba. And then you say, Asli Papu Dhaba. And then you see the real Asli Papu Dhaba. There's no copyright in India. And it seems that's been the convention for a long time. But Rupa Goswami was not plagiarizing other writers. He actually appreciated what they wrote because there is value in everything. Yad yad vibhuti mat sattvam, shrimad urjitameva va, ityadi. Krishna tells us, whatever you see, whatever you appreciate in this world that is beautiful, it has its utility, but that is to offer these things under the lotus feet of Krishna. So that was Rupa Goswami's mood. Anyway, so Padyavali is like that, about 400 verses. I translated Padyavali for BBT as well. Samanya Virudavali Lakshana. That means a general description of the Virudavali. Virudavali is a specific type of Sanskrit poetry. This is the only book that defines the Virudavali style of Sanskrit poetry. It's a complex style that involves various types of rhythmical phrasing, abundant alliteration, special word choices, in particular compositional structures, very high poetry. These Goswamis were great poets. That's why he's called, another one, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, or even in the vernacular, Govinda Das Kaviraj, yes. Because one of the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava is to be a poet. And the Acharya has to show us, what does it mean to be a poet? So Rupa Goswami gave us this example as well. He wrote another book called Govinda Virudavali. So this is an example of all the rules that he states in this Virudavali Lakshana. Mathura Mahatmyam. We are all living in Mathura, Vraj district. And we can appreciate this book. It's quoting from various Puranas, specifically Varaha Purana, about the glories of Mathura district and Vraj Dham in general. Wonderful, wonderful book. Very inspiring book. Hansadutta. Hansadutta. We know the name of Kalidas. Anyone heard? He's like the Shakespeare of classical Indian poetry. Or Shakespeare is the Kalidas of classical English poetry, is maybe a better way to put it, because actually he was first. Shakespeare came much later. But, so he wrote a book, famous book called Meghaduta, and so many other authors, they copied him. And so Rupa Goswami wrote his Hansaduta. He sees that Swan is taking messages after Krishna's departure. For Mathura, Radharani's almost dying. We know this from so many sources. So Lalita goes to the Yamuna to fetch some water for Radharani, and she sees a swan. And she gives a swan this message to Lord Krishna. And hopefully he will carry that message. Radharani is begging Krishna to have a heart on Lalita and come back to Mathura. Very pathetic. So that's Hansaduta. Uddhava Sandesh is a very similar kind of idea. It's another genre of classical Sanskrit poetry, Sandesh. Same idea, just like Meghaduta. But this one is entirely Krishna conscious, unlike Meghaduta and others. Then he wrote Radha Krishna Ganno Desh Deepika. All the associates of Radharani and Krishna, they're all described in great detail in that book. It's kind of like in Chaitanya Leela, we have what book written by Kavi Karnapur? Gaura Ganodeshi Deepika, in which he outlines the same thing. And in fact, he identifies many of the characters of Gaur Leela with the characters mentioned in Radha Krishna Ganodesh Deepika. But without Rupa Goswami, we don't know any of this. So we should pay our obeisances, bow our heads at his feet today, lotus feet. Krishna Abhishek, that's also called, Krishna Janma Titi Vidhi, something like that. How to perform Janmashtami. This is a ritual work. He's not just a poet, he's not just a scholar, he's an expert in Pancharatra and Agama as well. Very, very wide-ranging. Pratyukta Khyata Chandrika. This is moonlight of commonly used verbs. This is you can say it's like a dictionary, but it defines some select verbal roots and their meanings drawn from a larger work on grammar. So he was a grammarian, as I said. Nikunjara Hasyastava, glorification of the secret pastimes in the Nikunj. This is a describing confidential pastimes of Radha and Krishna in the forests of Vrindavan. But as I said, we want to talk today about Laghu Bhagavatamritam. What does Laghu Bhagavatamritam mean? Laghu Bhagavatamritam. Laghu ka matlab kya hai? Yeah, chota. For Tamils here, it's chinna. So, Sanatan Goswami, his elder brother, wrote the big Bhagavatamritam. And what does Bhagavatamritam mean? Not Bhagavatamritam, Bhagavatamritam. Yeah, about the devotees. It's very interesting. Because Brihad Bhagavatamritam mainly describes the different classes and the different characters and respective elevation of Krishna's devotees. And it also discusses, at least implicitly, the different forms of the Lord and how he relates with his devotees. But this work by his younger brother Rupa Goswami, Laghu Bhagavatamritam, it does the opposite, actually. Mainly it talks about the different forms of the Lord. And at the very end, he talks about the devotees as well. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So, this is a very, very important book, Laghu Bhagavatamritam, because in this book, he is focusing on proving something that's only implicit in the Brihad Bhagavatamritam. What is that? That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in order to do so, he actually classifies and puts into a hierarchy the different forms of the Lord, multi-forms of Lord Vishnu. The whole Pancharatric scheme that we know, beginning with Swayam Bhagavan Krishna and expanding as Baladev, and then the Chaturvyuha, and then the Purusha expansions, and then the different various incarnations and their multi-forms, all this is described in one place, and that's the Laghu Bhagavatamritam. And it is not described, he's not inventing this out of whole cloth also, Rupa Goswami. He's quoting again from the wide range of Shastras that we've already seen he knows, and he's substantiating everything. It's written in a style called Karika, in which you make your assertion, and then you back up your assertion by quoting so many previous authorities that everyone already accepts. So this is Laghu Bhagavatamritam. He's describing a hierarchy of divine forms mentioned in various Shastras and proves that Krishna is the original, complete, supreme personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan. So, we can look at this book in a little bit more depth. First of all, I'd like to point out that there's much in the present day that resembles the 16th century or the 17th or 18th centuries. It's actually looking more like the 18th century now. What happened in India in the 18th and 19th century especially? Huh?
Captured by the British?
Yes, but why did the British take over India at that time? Mughal Empire was in decline. Just like the whole Western Empire now is in decline, isn't it? Right? Because religion is lost there. To the extent you have religion, to that extent yatra yogeshwaro Krishna ityadi. We know this. So India was kind of like that. I mean, it was kind of set in motion already with the hegemony of the Mughal rulers, various Islamic rulers in general, but Mughals, especially after Akbar. Akbar was okay, but his sons were not so cool for India. They were not very friendly to the Vaishnavas or to any other Hindus either. So that's one thing we have in common with the 16th century. Also in the 16th century, although there were many Vaishnavas, most of them considered that Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu. Even at the present time, there are many people who think like this. So many. If you look in a dictionary or in an encyclopedia, that's what you'll be told. So Rupa Goswami took the trouble to research all the Shastras that deal with all these descriptions of all the various forms of the Lord, and he points out how they actually support the assertion of the Bhagavatam that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan. Ete changsa kalaha pungsa krishnastu bhagavan swayam ityadi. So, we also in the present day we're almost under siege by atheism, in much the same way that Hinduism, at least in North India, was under siege from foreign rulers, Islamic rulers in particular. Hindus were forced to practice their religion kind of in an undercover mode or in a less public way than was previously done. And that's still the case today. Actually, I like to joke with the Indians all the time. You think you got your independence in 1947, but you're still working for the same people that your grandparents were working for. It is a fact. Do not think otherwise. The proof of that is that for those of you in the IT industry, you are not considered to be onshore in your own country. You're onshore if you're in someone else's country working. Is it not a fact? Those who know IT know this. So this is another thing that we have in similar with the 16th century. But it's much worse now. Why is it much worse now? Because in the 16th century, our acharyas had to work very hard to convince their audience that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was a small blue cowherd boy named Krishna. We now have to convince the world that there's a God at all. And the more China eats away at India's borders, the worse it's going to get. Actually, China eats away at everybody's borders, but that's another matter. So this is the situation that we're in. So another difference is that in the 16th century, Rupa Goswami and his associates, they were mainly preaching to this country, the people where Sanatana Dharma was in some form or another practiced. But now this Hare Krishna movement has expanded worldwide through the monumental efforts of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki! Jai. So this unprecedented achievement was effected by Srila Prabhupada, who took very seriously the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the same orders that the Goswamis fulfilled when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told them, you preach Krishna consciousness by going to Vrindavan and writing so many shastras and establishing so many temples. So Srila Prabhupada was given his instruction, you print books and preach especially in the English language, because again, back to 1947 or so, when the Indian Constitution was being framed, there was a big push actually to make the national language of India what? Not Hindi, not English, Sanskrit, yes. And even one Bangladeshi, before Bangladesh of course, but from that side, Bengali Muslim, he was pushing for Sanskrit also because he was cultured. He could understand the importance of this language. Sanskrit language has a traditional, it has a tradition in every province of this country, all the way from Mizoram to Kerala, and from Kashmir to whatever. Everywhere, everyone knows Sanskrit. So this was the idea back in 1947, but unfortunately the Hindi wale, no offense to Hindi language, I also studied Hindi language, they pushed for their own thing, and the result is that now the lingua franca of this subcontinent, what to speak of the country, but the whole region, is English. So anyway, let's turn off our phones, all, please. Okay, so Rupa Goswami wanted to prove that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the modern world is so steeped and permeated by varieties of atheism, voidism, and impersonalism that this book still, even in 2024, has tremendous relevance for the world. Because all the things that our acharyas explain from Srimad Bhagavatam, in particular, 1.3.23, Ete Changsa Kala Pungsa, these things are expanded by this book. Actually, if we look at it, two books, Jiva Goswami's Shatsandarbhas and Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatamritam. These two books have the express purpose of proving that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm going to say more about this. We know that the essential teachings of the Shrutis or the Vedas are found in the Upanishads. The Upanishads are codified in terms of Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra. The natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Brihad Bhagavatam is expanding on the purport of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Laghu Bhagavatamritam is making it very clear, proving this idea that Krishna is God. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. How many times do we find it reiterated throughout Srila Prabhupada's books? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Every page, practically speaking, every single page, Prabhupada does not lose an opportunity to push this idea. Nobody can read Srila Prabhupada's books and get the wrong idea about this. It's so clear. So, this was the mission of the Vaishnavas of the 16th century, headed by Rupa Goswami and his elder brother Sanatan. And that essential teaching has been very nicely summarized in one traditional verse. Aradhyo bhagavan vrajesha tanayastadhama vrindavanam ramya kachirupasana vrajavadhu vargena ya kalpita Srimad Bhagavatam pramanam amalam prema pumartho mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhor matamidam tatradaro nah paraha. The supreme worshipable Lord is Krishna. His eternal abode is Vrindavan. The spotless Purana, or the some versions of this verse say Amala Puranam. Some versions say Amala Pramanam. Either way you want to look at it, the spotless evidence or the spotless Purana is Srimad Bhagavatam. The purport of the Bhagavatam is how did the gopis worship Krishna? This is the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for which we have the foremost respect, foremost regard. Srinath Chakravarti Thakur wrote this as the Mangalacharana, his commentary, Chaitanya Matamanjasa of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Brihad Bhagavatamritam of Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami's elder brother, expands the Bhagavatam's ocean of nectar. That's why it's called Bhagavata Amrita, the nectar of the devotees. And Rupa Goswami proposed his Laghu Bhagavatam as the sequel to that. It focuses on the essential and primary truth, which is known as Sambandha Gyan. If you don't understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, now how in the world are you going to understand anything about his pastimes? First things first. The Sambandha Gyan, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in his Harinama Chintamani, you cannot chant Hare Krishna without offense unless you have adequate Sambandha Gyan. So for those of you who are not reading Srila Prabhupada's books every day, just think about this. Sambandha Gyan means a preliminary understanding of the relationship between Godhead and all of his emanations. That means his relationship with this world, his relationship with his devotees, the relationships between things in this world, between devotees in this world, between the Lord and his devotees, between the Lord and his other energies. All these things are described to be Sambandha Gyan, and these things are described in Laghu Bhagavatamritam in particular. So, Gopi Paranadana Prabhu, who prepared the BBT edition, translation of this Laghu Bhagavatamritam, he writes in text number 10 that by describing the various self-same forms one after another, Rupa Goswami is speaking actually, this is translation, I will show through appraisal of comparative excellence that Krishna is the most worshipable Lord. So he's proving this point. Aradhyo Bhagavan Vrajeja Tanayas. So, to consider this name, we have to consider this aim, I mean to say, we have to look at the Srimad Bhagavatam. I mentioned a couple of times already, Ete Changsa Kalah Pungsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Indradi Vyakulam Lokam, Mridayanti Yoge Yoge. What does it mean? All the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam had to be expanded in this way by Rupa Goswami, because in Kali Yuga we become increasingly dumb. Every generation is a little bit less sharp than the previous generation. It's just a fact. You look at your parents or your grandparents especially, or your great-grandparents, and you can see, who am I in comparison? Nothing but a fig. So this is an important point. Emphasizing Krishna's unique primary position as the superlative and original personality of Godhead. This verse is a it's a foundational axiom of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. What do we call that in Sanskrit? Paribhasha Sutra, Jiva Goswami says. It's a governing declaration. All the other verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam have to be understood with reference to this principle, this essential Sambandha Gyan, that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada, out of the blue, he would just ask a disciple, do you really believe that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And no matter what they would say, they were lost. Because if they said yes, Prabhupada would say, why? And if they said no, then Prabhupada would say, rascal. So, yeah, we have to cultivate this wisdom. We have to cultivate this Sambandha Gyan. We can only do that by studying Srila Prabhupada's books. That is the only purpose for which Srila Prabhupada stayed up so late every night, writing them. For whom? For us. Yes. So, Jiva Goswami has called this the Paribhasha Sutra in his Krishna Sandarbha. Basically it means Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which we said is there in every page of Prabhupada's books. Running out of time here, but Bhagavatamritam was clearly, Brihad Bhagavatamritam was clearly predicated on this understanding, but Rupa Goswami definitely wanted to make this explicit. So Srila Prabhupada, in composing his own pranama mantra, told us what? In the second of his pranama mantras, what does he say? What is he telling us? Namaste, Gauravani Prajani, Nirvishesha, Shunyavadi, Paschatya Deshatani. That was his mission. It speaks to his mission, as he saw it. He himself wrote that verse. He saw it as his mission to deliver especially the Western countries, because everybody is aping them. Monkey see, monkey do. So if they can be freed from the shackles of impersonalism, voidism, things that naturally result from atheism, then there's hope for the rest of the world. That was Prabhupada's strategy, and it worked, because where is Krishna consciousness spreading more than anywhere else nowadays in the world? Russia? Maybe, I don't know that, but I'm seeing India. And I know that we can't even keep count of the number of temples that are opening every day here. That was Prabhupada's, it was his strategy. So, Srila Prabhupada expressed this even in his famous Vyas Puja offering of 1936, when he wrote that Krishna, he was quoting, Krishna who is known as Govinda, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sananda Vigraha Nadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Like this. Now, Srila Prabhupada also instituted daily practices in the ISKCON movement that were such that even casual ISKCON participants would, at least in theory, understand immediately Krishna is the Supreme Lord. That we've told already. He repeatedly emphasized this essential truth throughout his books, so much so that Tamal Krishna Goswami could fairly identify it as Srila Prabhupada's Mahavakya. No, he said this. And he wasn't the first person to say it also. S.K. Day said the same thing, maybe 100 years earlier. So, he writes like this: for Prabhupada, the wide range of topics that come under the umbrella of Sambandha is commanded by one axiomatic truth. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is Prabhupada's Mahavakya, his great saying that informs the entire content of his thought, which would radically change without it. As a semantic time-release device, it's deployed throughout his already prioritized texts as a gradual disclosure of reality. Nowhere are Srila Prabhupada's pedagogical skills more in demand than in making the otherwise abstruse Gaudiya Vaishnava ontology comprehensible. Much of this burden is shouldered by the formulaic assertions Foremost among them, his Mahavakya. Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is found repeated throughout all of Srila Prabhupada's books, and all of his arguments are based on Rupa Goswami's Lagu Bhagavatamrita, and of course Jiva Goswami's Shatsandarbhas as well. If you look throughout Srila Prabhupada's purports, you will see, if you know the Sandarbhas, if you know these Goswami's literature, you can understand where is this coming. Each and every statement, you can trace it back to its origin. It's possible to do this. ISKCON Prabhupada has called his own books, Bhagavad-Gita as it is. I mentioned the other day that when I first saw this title, as it is, I thought that sounds extremely presumptuous. Why, only my book, only my Gita is the real Gita, right? But then I read the Bhagavad-Gita, and finally I read one that I could understand, because it was clear and it was authoritative. The whole purpose of the Bhagavad-Gita is to awaken us, not confuse us. So why so many Bhagavad-Gitas are confusing us? Because their purpose is to hide Krishna. They don't want you to wake up. They want you to stay in illusion and continue paying them, and dangle a carrot of enlightenment in front of you, as if you'll ever get it from them. So Srila Prabhupada was different than this. Srila Prabhupada has made sure that he was like a clarion call. He wanted his Mahavakya, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, to be very clearly understood throughout the modern world. So, with copious scriptural references and this simple yet sublime assertion is showing us that popular Krishna devotion is elevated beyond the poetic sentiment or personal opinion. It is actually a Shastra Siddhanta. It's a conclusion of all the Shastras. And it can be shown through serious philosophical exegesis. So, it's a priceless source of information. It answers all the perennial questions that any genuine spiritual seeker should ask. And it gives us understanding of the multi-forms of Godhead. What do you have to say when it's Vamana Dev's appearance day? You look to Lagu Bhagavatamrita, the answer is there. So, it does a lot of things other than that, but this is my synopsis of the Lagu Bhagavatamrita. It's one of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition's most important and fundamental and definitive texts. It's a foundational work substantiating the essential theological conclusions that animate the entire ISKCON society worldwide. And ISKCON is, of course, the major vehicle through which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are understood in the modern world. That, again, is the effort of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, who saw fit to take his part in trying to follow in the footsteps of these six Goswamis and carry out Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order in the modern day and age. What is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order? Jare dekhe tare kaha, Krishna Upadesh. That's what Srila Prabhupada did. So, I've mentioned already that Srila Rupa Goswami presents Lagu Bhagavatamrita in the typically concise style of philosophical shastras, short definitions and statements of fact with the support of quotations from authoritative references. This is, I'm quoting now from Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu's commentary on his translation, followed by his own explanatory verses. All right, so there are 5 chapters. First of all, there are 2 sections of the Lagu Bhagavatamritam. First thing is Krishnamritam, the nectar of Krishna. Second section is Bhaktamritam, the nectar of his devotees. 5 chapters in the first section. So after he's offering obeisances and stating his methodology, that being an important philosophical precedent we should follow, Rupa Goswami states that he intends to demonstrate that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and he illustrates clearly why Srimad Bhagavatam depicts the Lord's incarnations as limitless, and he informs us that these avatars come in a specific order. And he also tells us about certain forms are more important than others, like Paravastha forms. Anybody know who they are? Paravastas, Ram, Krishna, Nrsimha. They also happen to be the most important or most popular. But they're the most important. But the supreme form of the Lord is Sri Krishna. So, the manner in which Lagu Bhagavatamritam classifies the tremendous variety of divine forms of the Lord helps us also to deepen our own appreciation for another key Gaudiya Vaishnava assertion, which is that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. Very, very important thing. Rupa Goswami had to prove that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have to prove that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That means we have to be convinced that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we cannot be convinced of that unless we actually hear. Why do we say this? These are the informations that we find in Prabhupada's books. So, Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sango Pangasra Parshadam Ityadi. This verse is another central assertion of Jiva Goswami's Shatsandarbhas. He's unpacking all the things that were implicit in his predecessor's works, and he's making them explicit. Jiva Goswami. All right, so chapter 5 of the first part of the Lagu Bhagavatamritam, the Krishnamritam section, that's like triple the length of all the other chapters put together, in much the same way that the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam is so much vast compared to the other 9. Because it's dealing with the same topic, the Lord Krishna himself. See, he says there that all the forms of the Lord are emanations from Krishna. Krishna is the emanator. They're all the amshas, he's the amshi. They're all the avatars, he's avatari. So this is another fundamental assertion of the Lagu Bhagavatamritam. He quotes a wide number of shastras. Particularly he quotes Vishnu Purana. We don't have time to really get into it. But he's explaining Narasimha Dev and how we prove that Krishna is the most merciful. He says, look at how Ram killed Ravana, how Narasimha killed Hiranyakashipu, and how Krishna killed Shishupal. None of them got liberation except for Shishupal. And we can even take it a step further. Who was that? Putana. Kamva dayalum sharanam rajema. This is just one example of the ways in which, from various angles and for many, many different reasons, just in terms of pure reason alone, what to speak of Shastra, Rupa Goswami is showing that Krishna is in a class of his own, far superior in terms of his manifestation of the full glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he explains the great mystery of Krishna's appearance. He explains the nature of Krishna's pastimes as prakarta and aprakarta. He talks about the inconceivable potencies of the Lord, the devotees and their expansions, and how Krishna reciprocates with them, and their intimate relationships. Time and space are rendered elastic by Krishna's inconceivable potency. The geography of Braja itself is limitlessly malleable as well. We talk about a lotus flower of Braj opening and closing according to the Lord's whim. So, all these things are described in this 5th chapter of the Krishnamritam. So all these manifestations of the Lord are there, and they're all tied together by his Achintya Shakti. Now, I'm going to close here, but before I do so, I should finish just by mentioning Bhaktamrita, the 2nd section of Lagu Bhagavatamritam, is only one chapter, but in it, Rupa Goswami clearly elaborates on an essential principle of bhakti, namely that in order to worship the Supreme Lord properly, one also has to worship his bona fide devotees. And then, citing a verse from Padma Purana, he makes it very clear that one who worships Govinda without worshipping his devotees cannot be a devotee. The scriptures call such a person a mere pretender. Commenting on this, Gopi Paranadana Prabhu explains, the personality of Godhead's various forms as Swayam, Rupa, Vilas, Vyuha, and so on can be graded according to how fully they exhibit perfect qualities. Similarly, the devotees of Godhead can be graded according to the quality of their devotion. This is eternal hierarchy, eternal variety, eternal gradation. Scary, but glorious at the same time. And then he gives a list of many well-known devotees, Lord Shiva, Prahlad, Pandavas, Uddhava, and ultimately the cowherd women of Vrindavan. The list fairly parallels what Sanatana Goswami had listed in his Brihad Bhagavatamritam, which is again why we call it Laghu Bhagavatamritam. So here again, the spiritual milkmaids of Vraja are established as the very best of all devotees. And readers are encouraged to worship them wholeheartedly. Ultimately, the very best of these gopis is Srimati Radharani, Radhe Sham, Lord Krishna's beloved consort, most beloved consort. In the final verse, 46, quoted by Rupa Goswami from Adi Purana, Lord Krishna said, O Partha, among all planetary systems, this earth is especially fortunate, for on earth is the town of Vrindavan. And there, the gopis are especially glorious because among them is my Srimati Radharani. Srimati Radharani ki jai. Now, all of us, we all owe a great debt to the late Gopi Pranadana Das Adhikari, my exalted God brother, who took it upon himself to translate this Laghu Bhagavatamritam in a very smart edition published some years back by the BBT. Very high-class publication, and not so thick also, only one volume. All these things are described in very easy English language, which you can purchase at least in the United States through ISKCON ISV, Silicon Valley, Vaisheshika Prabhu. He's in charge of marketing these new translations. And so this one has Gopi Paranadana Prabhu's English commentary, which is largely based on the Saranga Rangada commentary written by Baladev Vidyabhushan. Okay, so this is just a short glorification, I hope, of the Laghu Bhagavatamritam of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Laghu Bhagavatamritam is just a small speck, just a small fraction of the wonderful, almost limitless contribution that Rupa Goswami has made to the world of religion, to the world of literature, to the world of devotees. Present and future generations can all fall at the dust at his lotus feet and beg for his mercy, especially in the coming days and in particular on his appearance day, which we are continuing our celebration of for the next few days. So I'll stop here. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Anybody have any questions or comments? Are we allowed to ask questions? Or? Yeah. If anybody wants to make any comment or anybody has any questions.
Is it a squeeze of full Bhagavatam?
Sorry?
Is the book squeeze of all full Bhagavatam?
Is it a what?
Squeeze.
Squeeze. Is it the squeeze of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Well, okay, that's a new word for me. Or it's an old word with a new definition. Yeah, you can say that. I mentioned already. We have the four Vedas, and they're crystallized into Upanishads. The Upanishads summarized into Brahma Sutra. Brahma Sutra explained by Srimad Bhagavatam. Brihad Bhagavatamritam further explains the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam. But on this particular point that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and Srimati Radharani is his supreme devotee, this you will find in the Laghu Bhagavatamritam. It's kind of hard to take the Laghu Bhagavatamritam apart from the Brihad Bhagavatamritam because they're so closely related. Just as it's a little difficult to take the Ujjvala Nilamani as something separate from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. If you've not read Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, you'll never understand Ujjvala Nilamani. And you'll not understand any of these books if you've not read the Srimad Bhagavatam. And you'll not understand Srimad Bhagavatam if you've not read Bhagavad-Gita. And, adi, you understand. So this is why we always encourage everyone, please take it seriously. Read Srila Prabhupada's books. I'm saying this because I'm assuming that you're not doing it, because I know that in 2024, Khaskar Bharat mein, the only book anybody reads is Facebook. Hai na? So, we always have to encourage. Srila Prabhupada worked hard to write these books. Show some gratitude. Anybody here a disciple of Radhanath Swami? You can raise your hand or you don't have to. Yes, He's constantly harping on this point. You have to show some gratitude for what your spiritual master has done for you. I always say this also, that Guru Mukha Padma Bhakku Chite Te Kodi Aikya Arana Kari Hamani Asha. What kind of hypocrite are we if we're not actually doing it? So read Srila Prabhupada's books. Then you can make sense of some of the source texts that his purports draw from. You can put everything in context. And then when you preach Krishna consciousness, it has a lot more power and authority. If we can stay Kanishta Adhikaris forever, but this movement was not spread by that attitude in the 1970s. And Srila Prabhupada, had he remained in that Kanishta Adhikari, not that he ever was, but if he had chosen to just live as a Kanishta Adhikari Vaishnava, where would any of us be today? Think about it. Okay. That's an answer to whether this book is a squeeze of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Any other questions or comments? I learned something today too. I'm going to use that word from now on. Okay, so then we can stop here. Our prashna nahi? Okay, thank you very much. All glory Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.